truth is the most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
Today is, Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, the 1,448th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Sorry for that introductory hiccup. I'm sure it will not be the last one. Well. So I want to talk about Mike Johnson's acceptance speech. You know, he got named again the Speaker of the silly little Congress down there. And I want to talk about Trump's press conference today. And obviously, I was thinking of many other things to talk about. Maybe we'll get to some of them. But I watched Trump's press conference a couple of hours ago. There is just so much interesting stuff in there. And so I'm preparing and thinking about how I'm going to go through the Mike Johnson speech and how I'm going to go through the Trump press conference and not make it all clips so that it gets boring, especially if you have seen them before. And then all of a sudden, Burning Bright sent me over this tweet, and I have it now compiled into a thread reader so that I can actually just display the whole thing without a Twitter account. Okay. So I don't know anything about who this guy is. All right. Nothing about him. Let's see if I can find out about him. I'll just take a quick look at his, it'll still take me to his profile. All it says is, I write about power, influence, and transformation. Joined August 2024, joined Twitter in August of 2024, and he's got a Substack that I believe started a few weeks ago. And so, just to be clear, the reason why I am bringing this up is not only because it is an interesting and quality thread, but because, if I'm not mistaken, Donald Trump posted it himself on X, formerly Twitter. Let me find where Burning Bright sent it to me. Apologies. I didn't actually think I was going to speak about that part. Yeah, so I guess he did say it on Truth Social. I'd like to then just find the original Truth. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here we are. Let's look at this first. This is from Trump on Truth Social. Trump says nothing. And we have the beginning of this Todd Jacob thread. Okay? So with that displayed, let's look at the thread. And hey, StreamYard, make it so I can just do this as a default setting. All right. Here we are with our Todd Jacob thread. Try to blow it up. Trump's Time interview exposed a hidden genius. Everyone saw a rambling conversation, but buried inside was the most sophisticated psychological warfare in political history. Here's how he quietly rewrote the rules of influence. Bold. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Just, these are the things everyone on our side of the fence has been saying for years. Not singling myself out at all right now. I might later, but This is what many people have been saying for an awfully long time. And it's one of those things that if you're like really awake and in tune and paying attention to not only Trump, but what's actually emerging in the world, then you will find that it matches up and that that's what Trump is doing. The architecture of influence. Trump demonstrates what I call strategic omnipresence, simultaneous mastery of narrative construction, psychological framing, strategic ambiguity, emotional resonance. This isn't instinct, it's architectural genius. Okay. 72 Days of Fury. Trump's description of his campaign reveals his first strategic innovation: zero margin for error, constant momentum, perfect message discipline. The insight. He turned time pressure into psychological advantage. Most would crack. He thrived. Absolutely. Time, important variable, always, all the time. Psychological mastery. The common sense revolution. Again, true. It's just true. The Republican Party has become the party of common sense. This statement reveals Trump's genius in 3 dimensions, reframes complex ideology as simple wisdom, positions opponents as overthinking elites, creates instant psychological alignment with voters. And yes, that's true. But on this, I would just push back slightly on Todd Jacob and say that many people took that exact tack well before Trump did, by saying common sense, common sense, common sense. What we need are common sense solutions. We heard that for years, if not decades, in politics. So if that's the case, again, not to knock Trump's genius or mastery in any way, but if that's the case, that people have been trying that for a long time, then there's something else about Trump that must be active, right? It's his authenticity or the entertaining nature through which he presents these things, or his commitment to getting out in front of the public to say these things over and over again. So there's something in addition to the proper reframing of that. And that's all I want to point out. I do agree with that. Strategic communication matrix. When discussing immigration, notice his technique. Concrete numbers, 182 countries. Emotional resonance, invasion, solution framework. I'll get them into every country. This isn't rambling. It's calculated psychological orchestration. And I would agree with that on some level. I would agree with that on every level. I'm not sure if he actually describes it down here. I think he comes back to it. We'll come back to it. The genius of strategic ambiguity. On controversial topics, observe his pattern. We're going to look at everything. We'll see what happens. Many people are saying this isn't evasion. It's strategic optionality, maintaining maximum maneuver space while reading audience response. Good take. Good take. I think it's other things in addition to that, but yeah, that's exactly right. Masterclass in narrative warfare. When discussing the assassination attempt, watch the genius. Transforms personal danger into collective meaning. Converts trauma into spiritual awakening. Creates multi-layered emotional resonance. This is how you turn events into legends. Interesting take. This is also how things look when they are entirely scripted and then performed by actors. Just to be clear. The architecture of movement building. His response about MAGA's future reveals 3-dimensional chess, builds warrior mythology, creates succession framework, maintains strategic mystery. He's not just planning for 2024. He's architecting decades. Of course he is. The people who are actually controlling things are far ahead of us on an informational timeline. I can't explain the informational timeline in full right here. I have an episode called The Informational Timeline. If you have not heard it, or no, I think it's called The Informational Time Machine. That's what it's called. But the idea is there's a gap between when people operating in real time, the people who are leading whatever the future of the world is, the people way out ahead of that, there's a huge gap between them and us. And then there's an even bigger gap between them and what people who believe everything on TV believe. Okay? And so if, for instance, right now, you took the vaccine, but you regret it, if you had known now, or if you had known then what you know now, you would have made a different decision. That should be obvious. The regret makes it obvious that you would have changed your mind if you had the situation to do over again. But you don't have the situation to do over again. All you can do is try to minimize the gap on that informational timeline so you stop making terrible decisions like that. And part of that is reclaiming your own personal sovereignty and a bunch of other things. Okay? So these people are legitimately decades ahead. They are the ones running shit. Okay? It's not worth arguing about because we know there is far greater power at work in the world, in the material realm. And I'm not talking about like in a spiritual sense. Although it might be that too. There's real evil in the world. But people who are, tech billionaires, Elon Musk certainly knows, or at least thinks he knows, about what the world is going to look like in the future. He probably has a very good idea. And the fact that he believes it will look that way means that people are going to communicate it that way. And then other people will adopt that same belief, thereby working to create the reality in the future. That's hyperstition. Okay? So these people know far more than we do. Far more than we do. All right? That's why I think it's so dumb that all the Con Inc. normies on Twitter, everybody gathered around the intellectual kids table, is always telling Donald Trump what to do like he's dumb. Like the thing they heard on Ben Shapiro is what he really should have done. As if Ben Shapiro is just a neutral observer analyzing because he's trying to figure it out for himself, figure it out and help other people understand it, avoid terrible consequences. No, he's not that. He's clearly not that. So believing that you have the right answer and should go say bad things about Donald Trump because he's not doing the thing that Ben Shapiro said he should do, and you think this makes you smarter than Trump. You know how Trump is wrong, and you're going to show him. You've witnessed that for damn near 10 years now, and they haven't figured it out. They miss all of this. Donald Trump has information they cannot possibly access. Okay? We have been lied to in infinite ways. History, science, the mainstream media, all of it. Okay? The fake news of today is not only the future's history, it was also the fake news from 100 years ago that we read today as authoritative history. These things are massive problems. And I don't suggest that they're just going to be immediately solvable. And I'm not sure they're solvable at all, which is why you seek God, of course. But in terms of what the future is going to look like, these people are well ahead of us. And it is okay to admit that, right? Some people are totally tuned out from any conversation about what the future might look like. And ultimately, hey, maybe that's where you have to land. But if that's not the right move, then knowing about what's happening in the world and what the future might look like and how you might prepare for it are probably important concerns, which is why it's important to advance on an informational timeline and why it's so sad and unfortunate to see people around us not attempting to do that. It's not about us being right and them being wrong, us being awake and them being asleep. It's that if you're going in the wrong direction and don't turn around, you're going to end up a lot farther down in the wrong direction. Okay? The direction is to follow the timeline forward until you get closer and closer and closer to real time. And in that process, it requires a spiritual unwinding of what is past, right? The mistakes, the things that you have done, all the traumas, whatever it is, your misunderstandings, your education, you have to unwind all of these things. And when you engage that process at a deep level, eventually you become absolutely certain that God exists. Okay? And so the point of catching up on the informational timeline is not just to better understand of what's actually happening in the world around you so you can interact with it as a moral actor in an effective way. The point is that process leads you to God. Okay. So, and I don't know how anyone could argue against that. No, it's better not to try to resolve all of the things about yourself and about how you perceive the world, how you've gotten them wrong. I think that that's like one of the most important things we can do. In fact, I like, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, I started writing this essay called The Joy of Having Been Wrong. And then somehow it like blipped off my computer. And I went back to it a few times and tried to re-engage with it. And I wasn't able to do so in the same spirit that was driving me to write it in the first place. And I felt then that I would be forcing it. And sometimes that's just a bad writer habit. And it probably is, honestly. I focus so much time like keeping up and doing the show that I often have a hard time getting into that groove. But what I was just saying, that's the point of that. Like, there's actual joy in letting go of things that hold you back in the past, right? Letting go of all these false beliefs that have been indoctrinated into us by legitimately the fake news. Okay, the fake news reports what academia says. Academia serves the authoritative source directly, right? What beliefs do we want to conjure in the public? They gather the beliefs from the authoritative source. What is that authoritative source? Well, it's the false god of scientific materialism. And then they pass those that new knowledge onto the news, who then gives it to us. We adopt those beliefs because we think that these people are actually experts and are telling us the truth and trying to create a better world. And then we go and make that world exist. Okay? We can make a world exist without those people. Honestly, all the experts, all the academics, all the scientists, all of them. A world would exist without them. Now, I'm not knocking all of them or the things that they engage with, generally speaking, although we can probably go harder on them than that. But this is not an attack on them. It is an attack on scientific materialism. Okay? And so it is entirely possible that they know what is going to happen way ahead of us. It is, in my mind, necessarily true that they have to. Or, perhaps we're all just creating this thing entirely spontaneously from our own minds. I don't know. Let me pause for a second to make sure chat's not like, what in the world? Okay. I think we're good. Okay. Let's continue with Todd Jacob here. I didn't want to get his name wrong. Psychological dominance technique. Study his handling of opposition. Reframes attacks as validation. Converts weakness into strength. Uses opponents' energy against them. This is political jujitsu at the highest level. Yes, he is right about that. It is also the enemy's tactic for all time. Okay? Now, this is very in line with the singularity topic that we were briefly discussing yesterday with Sam Altman. It's going to be one thing or the other because the things are indistinguishable besides the breakdown between these people clearly believe in good and evil. These people clearly believe in nothing. Okay? So it legitimately is the Christian God versus scientific materialism at the end of the day, in my mind. Hey, maybe you figured it out some different way. But one of those things or the other is going to win because they are both doing the exact same thing. All right? Now, the thing they are doing is often just the kind of the tactic of color revolution style communist takeovers. All right. So we wouldn't want to do those things. That would be terrible if we were indistinguishable from the communists. I don't believe that is true. But it's something that we should be mindful of when we are looking at the top levels of this thing and what's driving it, and that's okay to do. It's necessary to do in my mind. We're abandoning our duty as moral actors if we don't do that. Okay. So you have to keep an eye on this stuff, but there's no doubt that he's doing it. Now, are these acts evil in themselves? Okay. Is reframing an attack as validation evil in itself? Well, it doesn't seem like it would be evil if you are innocent and someone else is actually persecuting you. Okay? I don't know. Is it the best tactic? I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm trying to think about that right now. Like whenever I try to think about ideas like this, I try to think about them like based on myself, something I really do that can provide a counter argument that I can like really get behind myself. Like I'll argue against myself, basically. Maybe that's crazy. So I'm trying to think about it like the attack being banned on Twitter, for instance, right? Is that validation? I think maybe people perceive it as validation. I think on some level, I certainly perceive it as validation. I don't know. In my mind, I attempt to use that issue more to expose the fact that we exist in an environment of censored information, and that information is censored for a very particular reason. That reason is to exploit people. And if you operate knowingly in a censored environment, you are going to be stuck at what I call the intellectual kids table and unable to operate with any of the information that exists outside of that limited environment. So I don't know. Is that valid? Oh, where did I go here? Is that validation? I don't know. I'll leave that for you guys to judge there. Jonathan makes a good point in the chat. Not sure if perhaps I overstated my case or misspoke. I will defer to his words. He said, definitionally, if it is the Christian God versus scientific materialism, then the Christian God wins because otherwise he isn't the Christian God. Oh, okay. I got you totally. I thought you were saying I shouldn't have said it that way. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have. We all make mistakes. Okay, so let's continue on. I'll pull that thread back up. The genius of temporal manipulation. I don't view it as a comeback. This isn't denial. It's temporal mastery. Rewrites a historical narrative, a false historical narrative, collapses past, present, and future, which has to be done so that you can see that everything is also everything else, and all their inversions break down when you understand that the history you've been taught is the same way the fake news is portraying reality right now. If you can just find the ways those things match up, past, present, and future collapse, right, into the one thing, and you can watch it happen around you, okay? You can apply this to the fake news and learn that all the news is fake and just how deeply fake it is. You can also apply this to the Bible and learn just how deeply true it is. It's strange how that works, isn't it? It's almost like there's this group of people who controlled everything, who have tried for 2,000 years to make Christianity go away. It really is incredible. Honestly, I mean, I don't talk about this all that often. I don't think. I discovered this for myself, I don't know, 3.5 years ago or something. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was real dumb that I believed all that other shit. Oh, man. Okay. Rewrites a historical narrative, collapses past, present, and future, creates psychological continuity. Indeed. He's not just winning news cycles, he's rewriting time itself. Again, indeed. And this is something that obviously I've talked about at great length. The neo-reactionary philosopher who seems to be coming to Jesus right now, Nick Land. I could be wrong about that. I don't know the man. He also writes about this phenomenon that we are observing, able to observe with time collapsing. Okay? You think it's just in your mind. It's not just in your mind. And you know what's funny? I had a thought with a talk with some friends who are unfortunately scientific materialists. Although I think I hope they'll come around. Maybe that sounds arrogant. I don't mean to sound arrogant. I just really love them. And I think that they're making a huge mistake. And I was making that mistake for a great part of my life, just to be clear. But I brought up the Big Bang. It was 14.8 billion years ago. Now that is a nonsensical idea. That is an utterly retarded idea that is founded on absolutely nothing except other guesses that people have accepted as true. Okay? It is a preposterously stupid notion. And a few weeks ago, they changed it from 14.8 billion years to 28 billion years. Okay? So they just said that the universe became twice as old with the snap of a finger. Now, if we're all in a simulation, maybe they're right. But if we're all in a simulation and we think the point is to score the most likes and most points, then what are we doing? So a lot of weird stuff happening. I think you actually can. The point I was making, sorry, to finish that point, is the scientific materialists and the fake news just combined to tell us that time had just changed, right? So it's an alignment on all of it. When I see stuff like that, I'm like, these retards are trying to explain a phenomenon that everyone else will be aware of at some point so that they believe what happened was that thing rather than the thing they observed. Okay? Because that is how belief from scientific authority operates. All right. Let us continue. Back to the thread. Donald Trump hugging the flag. By the way, everybody's been sending around this meme that says Donald Trump's plane has 55 stars on the flag on the tail. That may be true because I've never seen Donald Trump's plane in person, but the picture they're sending around very clearly has 50 stars. So what can you do about this sort of thing? His discussion of everyday concerns, groceries, heating, security shows, this is strategic empathy engineering. It shows perfect calibration to psychological pain points, transformation of policy into emotional resonance, creation of instant psychological ailment. This isn't populism, it's empathy architecture. Well, yes, I mean, I think it's beyond that again. There's very clearly a mass awakening going on. People going from one side, like if the belief was a continuum, like like the political right and political left, even though everybody's wrong about that. If total scientific materialism, Satanism, whatever these awful belief systems are over there, to absolute full positive faith in God. Gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought in trying to lay that out as a picture. I hope that you got it. Man, I got like, sometimes when I'm doing this spontaneously, which is why I occasionally like the old format with the audio, I will be able to work one of these thoughts out, like by pressing pause and sitting back for 5 or 10 minutes. Now I'm trying to work them all out on the fly, and it doesn't always come through as planned. The meta strategy. Let's just steam ahead, and maybe I'll come back to it. Most politicians play checkers. Some play chess. Trump reveals he's playing a game most don't even see. Multidimensional psychological warfare, strategic narrative engineering, reality reconstruction at scale. Reality reconstruction at scale. I've been talking about that for years. And by the way, I'm not trying to play who got there first with this guy. Donald Trump tweeted this out, or not tweeted, but Truth Social this out today. Donald Trump is making this something the public will actually read. And regardless of whether or not they come down agreeing with it or being convinced by it or anything, this is essentially a list of ideas that have been expressed by me, you, the entire community for years. And now Donald Trump is publicizing them directly. Okay. So I just want to make sure that that's the reason I'm pointing this out, because that changes also how you close gaps in an informational timeline. When you realize, oh, the people who were saying this 4 years ago were actually the ones who were right. Well, I should immediately begin learning from them, right? If you're one of the people who got vaccinated and you realize at some point that that was a really bad idea, then you have to have the thought, okay, those conspiracy theorists, they got that right. And most people by now have at least seen the memes that say that conspiracy theorists have gotten it right. So everyone already has the premonition that conspiracy theorists got it right. So when they find out they are wrong about one of those things, they're like, oh, those conspiracy theorists, they were right. And then they begin to look into the stuff, those beliefs, the way they are laid out by the people who were right, the people who had spent time studying these things and thinking deeply about them. Okay? So putting this out into the world on Donald Trump's part seems like a massive support for this entire body of thought, okay? Which I'm certainly a part of. You are certainly a part of. I am not anything other than a part of it, okay? But these are things we have been talking about for years. I believe this is monumentally important, okay? I don't know anything about this writer. Again, he just joined X, formerly Twitter, in August, and he just started his Substack, okay? So this could entirely be an op, and if it is, thank you. But, proceed with caution, of course. Reality reconstruction at scale. That's honestly a big one. It really is a big one. They have created a false reality, as I've been describing for years on this show. I've been describing the contours of that false reality. I've been talking about how to pull ourselves out of that false reality by recognizing it, rejecting it, and allowing it to collapse on its own. Nick Land observes the same phenomenon, and that's what we are talking about right here. And this should be another reminder of how important narratives are in constructing the world as we experience it. Okay, there's the world as it is, and there's the world as we experience it. Amazing, though. Legacy engineering. My father would have said it's just Donald. Okay, I'm not familiar, actually, with that Trump quote. If one of you in the chat is, or you know the video or whatever, hit me with it. Well, maybe, hold on. Let me ask the machine for a second. Maybe the machine will bestow it upon me. The machine, by the way, is a tool. It doesn't have to be a false god. It's in the worshiping. Okay, so let me copy that. My father would have said it's just stopped. Nothing. Okay, so if somebody in the chat has the provenance of that quote, feel free to hit me with it, and I will absolutely have a look at that and share it. Final genius move makes extraordinary seem inevitable, collapses achievement into identity, creates mythological resonance while maintaining authenticity. It's almost like he is spreading truth with a megaphone, okay? Obliterating that false reality. And we know who and what have created that false reality, okay? He's destroying it. This is how you build more than victory. You build legend. It is far more than legend. The hidden pattern. Trump's genius lies not in any single technique, but in the orchestration of psychological warfare, narrative dominance, strategic ambiguity, temporal manipulation, reality engineering, all operating simultaneously, all reinforcing each other. Well, now, that sounds like Trump might be the front man for the most advanced military operation in human history. Certainly the most advanced psychological warfare operation in history. And of course, that's exactly what it is. Okay? The point is the Great Awakening. The point is not anything short of that. So, elections? Nonsense. All right? Documents that have been inverted? We can get back there if you like the document, okay? But we can't let the inverted document rule us. And it goes on. Anyhow, sorry. I just said anyhow and anyway at the same time. In fact, I started to say anyway and then thought, anyhow feels right. And totally blew it. Okay, so in the midst of that, we talked about how it might be that something is scripted. And we understand that television shows are scripted and movies are scripted. And we understand that all other forms, basically, of verbal communication are operating on some sort of incentive structure. And those are influencing the way things are communicated, right? So we also know, sorry, let me just, I don't want to say anything else about that. We also know that politics, even if politics is as real as some people believe it is, I believe it is virtually 0%, if not 0% real. But if it is 100% real and exactly what they think it is, they still are scripting their speeches, right? We're told constantly from the people who take politics more seriously than anyone has ever taken politics, the members of the regime, on regime media. They tell us that things are presented in a certain way. Politicians do certain styles of interviews, and they all just say, oh, this is how politics goes. Everybody has to try to look better than everybody else, because if you take a bad picture, oh, we're going to make fun of you on the TV, and then all your supporters are going to feel ashamed for supporting you. Most evil people of all time. Okay? But considering that aspect is a real thing in the world, we obviously know that there are speechwriters for politicians, or commonly there have been. Potentially there aren't. But in the most advanced and specific military psychological operation of all time, then all of this stuff would indeed be scripted. And people might be able to add their own notes, but it would be approved and the form would be, all the important points would be included. So it is not unreasonable at all to suggest that someone at that level of access might have access or at least influence on the speeches of people like Donald Trump or the speeches of people like wartime speaker Mike Johnson. And let's just actually do the wartime speaker again before we get into his speech, because I think that's important. This will take me just a sec. Save as wartime. Let me present wartime. Oh, no. Got buried in a pile of other things.
At times, okay? We're in dangerous times, as has been articulated here, around the world, and here at home. We need steady leadership. We need steady hands at the wheel. Look, I regard myself as a wartime speaker. I mean, in a literal sense, we are. I knew that when I took the gavel. I didn't anticipate that this would be an easy path. Former Speaker Newt Gingrich posted a couple days ago on his social media that this is the hardest challenge that's faced a speaker probably in the history of the country, in the moment that we're in right now. He said arguably may be comparable to the Civil War, but maybe worse.
Okay, so we talked about the Civil War yesterday, did we not? Is this time comparable to the Civil War? I would argue that this time is exactly the same as the Civil War, because history is a collection of stories they tell us in a cycle to manipulate us constantly throughout time. Okay? So past, present, and future collapse. This is exactly the Civil War. You can tell who the slaves are. We see them being imported millions at a time through terrible conditions. Many of them are assaulted, kidnapped, murdered, raped, turned into prostitutes or drug mules. And then when they get across the border, if they're still alive, if they are pregnant, then they can be industrialized as the input in the abortion industry. And if they are not, they get sent to some place where they are housed and fed in whatever way and taken care of medically in whatever way, and then just become indentured servants. And because they are paid and they are, they're trying to make them citizens, that means they are not slaves. How do you think the process went in the 1860s? Slaves were transported over here in terrible conditions. They were sent someplace to work. Whoever it was that bought them, they handle that stuff online now. There's forms. And then they go off to work somewhere where they have no power. And then if it comes to pass that the regime's system is being rejected, well, they simply turn their slaves on the part of the population that is rejecting their system. And of course, that's exactly what's happening right now. Okay, we're not to the part where there's actually kinetic violence, but that's what's happening right now. And by the way, you could argue that between MS-13 and migrant crime, there is kinetic violence against the people. Okay? To make us accept security state, the people are prepared to accept the arrest and prosecution of dissidents. It's what it is, okay? So we can see these at the same time. So if Mike Johnson is protecting whatever legitimate aspect there might be to our government, and I suggest that there is a possibility that there is some legitimate aspect, although I think that there's probably not, and that this is just being displayed. But there could be. I allow for that, okay? He is saying he's a wartime speaker because he is handling the same things. And if that's what he's doing against the regime as a public face standing in there, then that's a very patriotic thing to do. Okay? Now, I don't give a fuck. I should be nicer. I don't give a shit about the legislation, okay? I've been calling it Mike Johnson's package for a year and a half. What did he go in? A year and 3 months ago. 4 months ago. I didn't want there to be a speaker. You can go back and listen to the episodes. I thought no speaker should be named. I did not want a speaker because not having a speaker would prove to everyone how ridiculous the institution is and how it's not actually necessary. We're supposed to have the Constitution that protects everything. The states make their own decisions, and the Congress only ever passes legislation when everybody agrees it's the right legislation to pass. And instead, we're told, oh, they need to fund the government. No, they don't. What legislation do we want passed? Just get rid of all the illegitimate stuff. Get rid of all the constitutional nullities, okay? That can happen. Get rid of the agencies. We don't need to pass a budget. We don't need to do anything, all right? So that is how little I care about that institution right now. If we had a legitimate government, that institution would be the people's voice. Unfortunately, it's the inversion of that. That is the institution that the regime uses to sell all of this to the people as something they chose. Okay? So let's get to Mike Johnson's speech. And pull this up on Google Video. I'm going to skip about, I think, 2 minutes in here. I was operating on a different stream of this earlier, or like a native video, but this is going to be simpler, and I can put this at a faster speed. So let's do this at 1.25.
Our nation, it really is. And as members of the 119th Congress.
Okay, just go back a few seconds before this. And no offense to Mike Johnson, he gave a very lovely series of remarks about his wife and, his introductory remarks. We're just going to skip past those.
It's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Now it starts.
This is a momentous time in the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall.
Okay. We are stewards of the great American Revolution that happened 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. What do you think he means by that? Why did he bring up 1775? That's when the Continental Army was formed. Why didn't he talk about 1787 or 1789? He's talking about 1775 and 1776. Just saying, we are the stewards of the great American Revolution. That is certainly not what the regime and the Uniparty sell to us. Now, you can say, because a lot of people hate Mike Johnson, you can say, well, this is just lip service. Okay, maybe, right? I don't know. I'm just telling you what he's saying and what it means if you don't just view it through the lens of not liking Mike Johnson. The words are the words. This is scripted. And so the likelihood that this grand military operation or someone faithful to the Trump side of things is influencing this very high. And Steve Bannon on his show on War Room the day before talked about 1775 and the Continental Army. Steve Bannon used to be the philosophical backing of Donald Trump's speeches. He may still be, for all I know. I think he maybe even wrote the inauguration speech. Just saying. Let's continue.
Fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We're the ones who settled the West. We're the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War.
So, I mean, I would suggest that Mike Johnson is repeating false history there, but that is also kind of just now part of the American mythology, and Americans are proud of those things. Not sure any of those things actually happened, but there must be some way. Maybe some of them did. Wow. Love it. By the way, I think I'm basically convinced now that all the bullshit about outer space and all the bullshit about nuclear weapons is code language for like advanced technology. Okay. And certain countries were prevented from having it. Obviously, the regime's total advantage is their control of energy and power and resources and the rest of it. And of course, finance, media. These are the big macro picture tools of the regime. And so tech that they have suppressed would then be the stuff that they don't want out there, because that tech is a threat to their control over all those industries, technologies, mechanisms, whatever you want to call it. All right. So I think that conversation about nuclear and about space is code language for that stuff. And I hope that it'll become clear. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I just think it's pretty obviously bullshit when Elon Musk is screaming on Twitter all day about going to Mars in 2 years. Like, that's so dumb. I mean, unless, hey, man, maybe our world is completely how no one ever imagined it is. Maybe it's just beyond the ice wall. And hey, man, if it is, cool. You guys got that one right. I didn't know. Let's continue.
We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles, I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. The simple truth that it is parents and families and not administrators that must be in charge of their children's education.
Okay. And so then he gets back into Normieville. Let me skip ahead here.
From one-sided trade deals, and we're going to bring overseas investments back to America's shores. That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll make life affordable again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance, and that's what we'll do. We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas.
I'm going to pause this for a second because I think that I missed one of my important notes on this, and I might be able to find it with the transcript here. I believe that will be successful. And again, for anybody who isn't aware of the ability to do this on YouTube, you can simply use the find feature once you have pulled up the transcript and go very quickly to the part of the video you would like to watch. And so here we go.
We have a mandate, and that was shown in the election cycle. The people want an America First agenda. They do. Sadly, for the past 4 years of divided government, too many politicians in Washington have done the opposite. Open borders and overregulation have destroyed our cities and stifled innovation. Inflation and weak leadership have left Americans poorer, and they have placed our country in a perilous position. That's right. But in recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history, a groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again. And we will. And we will. This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly, and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the number one priority. Yes. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall.
I mean, that's very strong stuff. The American people have given us a mandate. They've told us what they want. That's what we're going to do. We are removing the uniparty agenda, the uniparty interests from the agenda, maybe is the best way to say it. This is great stuff, okay? You might think it's lip service to MAGA. I get it. I think it's probably not, okay? I don't have any dislike for Mike Johnson. I don't care about Mike Johnson in any way, shape, or form. Donald Trump supports Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson is saying these things after this became a big television event that everyone wanted to watch because it seemed like Mike Johnson might get voted out. And by the way, if Chip Roy and Thomas Massey and all those guys are just actors really selling that hard, cheers to them, I guess, okay? It's always possible that we got these people wrong. They didn't object to election fraud, and they supported Ron DeSantis, so they must be really good actors. But, yeah, let's continue. I want to search for one more thing to make sure I get it right. Ah, yes, here it is. Okay.
That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll
We
make
went
life
through some of
affordable
this.
again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance. And that's what we'll do.
I mean, think of how irresponsible it is to have enough energy to be totally self-sufficient and energy dominant worldwide, and we are not making use of it. Whose system is that? It's not America's.
We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas, pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal, that funding. We're going to expedite new drilling permits. We're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates.
I wanted to go through this again because this is going to come up later in the Trump press conference from today.
And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state.
We are going to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government, the administrative state. That's the point of all of it. He is telling all of them, your whole thing is done. Okay? Now, again, this can all just be a scene, and that's fine. I'm telling you what the scene is expressing. And we have to consider what that means in the bigger picture.
We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that.
All right. I mean, that's all the agenda. That is directly the MAGA agenda right there. Nothing can be mistaken there. I don't know what else the man's supposed to say, right? If you tell the truth, you say these things. It's possible to say these things without telling the truth, but do you want him just talking about wokeness all day? He's saying the right things. And then this, I thought, was fantastic. He went through Thomas Jefferson's, a prayer that Thomas Jefferson used to say every day. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I have the... Let's start right here. Oh, no, hold on. Gosh, this is such a... I'm sorry about this. Man. Oh, okay. How in the world? Okay, let's just play this right through to the next section.
Put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful personally that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. And this morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service and a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, it is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer. I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation, it's entitled. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law, we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, that's the Johnson speaker speech. Extremely interesting stuff in there. We are the stewards of the great American Revolution. Okay. 1775 and 1776. Talks about the people's mandate. He talks about the complete deconstruction of the administrative state. He talks about protecting America. Talks about dominating in energy. Talks about national sovereignty away from globalism, rejecting the uniparty agenda in full. Then he talks about providence and goes through that prayer. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, is famously, what is he, a deist, right? So is that offensive to people? I think that all of that is extraordinarily positive, and those certainly are not the kinds of things that we would have heard in a Hakeem Jeffries speech, who Johnson says obviously is his very good friend. So who knows what's going on in there? Hopefully we will never re-encounter Mike Johnson's package. Okay, no more legislation whatsoever. I know they're talking about 2 bills or 1 bill. They're trying to make a political issue where there is not a political issue. And that's fine. You know, maybe it'll be a sifting process. Brilliant, whatever. Boring. Let's get on with it. Intermission must come to an end. Let's continue. Okay, let's go to some of this Donald Trump press conference. Because hot damn, that was really something. By the way, he mentioned that Hakeem Jeffries was reading from Deuteronomy 10. Okay. Doesn't seem like a uniparty communist thing to do, but maybe Hakeem Jeffries is just an actor playing Barack Obama. Oh, man. It's all so weird. It's all so weird. All righty then. Why won't these videos show me how long they are? I'm trying to make sure that I have the full press conference here. Man, what a, I should just say, I think this press conference, as interesting as I think that Mike Johnson speech was, I think this press conference is more interesting. And I have a bunch of clips saved, and then there are a bunch of clips that we're going to go to YouTube for. So let us start. Realize I downloaded these all out of order. Let's start here with this guy, Hussein, who came down. Donald Trump did a press conference a couple of weeks ago with an investor who was prepared to invest $100 billion in American industry. And Donald Trump basically got him to commit to $200 right there on stage. And now he has another one of those today where he brings out a man named Hussein, and I'm going to probably pronounce his name wrong if I don't look directly at it while I'm doing it. I think it's Sorjani. We'll find it as we go through. I'm going to get to an article next after this clip. Let's just run the clip.
Leaders in the Middle East, indeed the world. He's a founder and chairman of DMAC Properties, Hussein Sajwani, very respected gentleman. And I'm thrilled to announce today that DAMAC will be investing at least $20 billion over a very short period of time into the United States, and they may go double or even somewhat more than double that amount of money. It's a great thing, and I believe he will say that he's doing it because of the fact that he was very inspired by the election. They wouldn't do it without that election. I can tell you a lot of people wouldn't. You saw last week where we have somebody who...
I mean, it's pretty incredible. They wouldn't have done it otherwise, okay? They were not going to do business in the United States, but because Donald Trump was elected again, now they're going to do business in the United States. Well, that's awfully weird, isn't it? And they're from the UAE. So what does that mean? There were entire parts of the world, entire industries cut off that America could not do business with because when the regime is in control, they don't do business with people who reject their agenda, okay? Because they don't want to enrich those people unless they have to, like the Zionists did with the Nazis. And if you think that I'm saying something offensive, you can go to the book, The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black, a Jewish Zionist. The book has been rewarded prolifically. It has been released in 3 editions. And in the 3rd edition, the epilogue is by the former head of the ADL. And what I said appears in that book. So, can't be anti-Semitic that way. I would never want to defame Semites. Are the Jews Semites? The Jews? It's all so confusing. It's like somebody took it and mixed it all up to confuse us forever. Let's go to Bloomberg. Trump's Dubai billionaire ally vows $20 billion for data centers. Data centers. Since Donald Trump was first elected in 2016, Hussein Sajwani, the head of DAMAC Group, wanted the world to know he was the U.S. president's man in the Middle East. So, long relationship. The real estate billionaire thrust himself into the spotlight again Tuesday, standing alongside the president-elect and promising an investment of at least $20 billion to build new U.S. data centers from Arizona to Ohio. The details of how Sajwani, whose net worth has surged in recent years to about $13 billion, according to Bloomberg Billionaires Index, will finance such an undertaking, weren't immediately apparent. But what's clear is that the 71-year-old developer is looking to capitalize on a relationship that dates back a decade when the two partnered on luxury golf courses in Dubai. Wow. How's it going to be financed? I guess it's a secret. How does the regime not know? Well, because they're not in the deal. I mean, when people are trying to do the Trump's a Zionist, Trump's on their side, Trump's just acting to lead us into that territory. I mean, maybe, all right, I can't prove it to you. Maybe Bloomberg is trying to trick us, thinking that they should know but wouldn't know or something. Maybe. Or maybe they're just not able to say. It's entirely possible that these people don't have information, okay? That the narrative is being generated from somewhere else. And the only access they have to details ever is when the narrative and all the aspects of it are generated internally so that they can control it all or at least access it all. Trump said the deal's first phase would span Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana, painting it as critical to keep the U.S. competitive in emerging technologies. He vowed to help it move quickly through the environmental and permitting process and cast it as a result of his election victory. Okay? And so, again, he said any regulations that are in the way, no worries. We're going to bypass those regulations if you invest, I think he said $3 billion and then was like, but if you invest $1 billion, I think we could probably just bypass those regulations. He is bringing in money from offshore. It is being called investments in infrastructure that the United States already needs that's very, very close to Bitcoin. And if not exactly Bitcoin, and it's probably exactly Bitcoin. I mean, are these all just business deals? Probably not. Or hey, maybe. I don't know. Maybe these guys have the best thing and Donald Trump is getting the best thing installed in our country. And they're doing it for free because there's some negotiation there. Or maybe it's just offshore money needs to be repatriated. And that would be called drainage. There was one more section from this. Oh, yeah, just this strange end here. Trump is pledged to use tariffs and tax policy to encourage foreign companies to invest in the U.S. On Monday, Trump denied a Washington Post report that his team was considering scaling back their plans for trade levies with more targeted tariffs focused on specific critical imports. Specific, okay? They tell you that tariffs are a tax and that everything you buy is going to be more expensive. Doesn't have to be. They're tariffing critical imports. It matters what they're tariffing and where those products are coming from. It is a leverage tool. We are not going to do business with you. We're not going to allow you access unless we are on fair terms. And if you're trying to manipulate things, well, we're just going to charge you more to do business. It's leverage. As for privately held DAMAC, which got its start focusing on luxury real estate in Dubai, it has been pushing into other parts of the world in recent years. The announced U.S. investment is part of a larger foray into the data centers business. EdgeNex, I don't know how you say that. Data centers, a unit of the Dubai-based conglomerate, plans to invest $3 billion over the next 3 to 5 years in building data centers in Southeast Asia, specifically in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. Now, if you remember back when we talked about, I don't know if it was the last BRICS meeting or if it was a different kind of international consortium, but we talked about how it was announced after that meeting that the BRICS coalition was going to be funding the building of Bitcoin infrastructure in the smaller, newly sovereign potential BRICS nations. Why are they doing that? Well, it's my suggestion that BRICS is going to be backed by Bitcoin, and it is also my suggestion that the U.S. dollar is going to be backed by Bitcoin. Could be wrong about that. I don't know. Okay? I can't possibly know. I'm not that far ahead on an informational timeline. But if you accept that it's possible, what I just said, and then you look for the emergence of that in reality, and you continue to see things that suggest the emergence of that in reality, then you will feel yourself advancing on an informational timeline. You'll be like, oh, it is this thing. And we don't actually have to just agree with those people who say it's the other thing, those people who wore 2 masks in their car. Okay? So, incredibly interesting there. Let me get to the time where later in the speech, Trump mentions data centers again. Oh, damn. Oh, you know what he said? This is what he said. I found this very interesting. AI, by the way, kind of similar to nukes in space, isn't it? AI, also Bitcoin. Okay. So he goes from talking about the golden age of business into, he talks about windmills and then to the golden age of business. And then he talks about the plants that are going to accompany the data centers. So let's check this out.
These places where you have long-term windmills standing, They're a disaster. They're rusting, rotting, closed, falling down. This is as you enter Palm Springs. And they put new ones next to them because nobody wants to take them down, because why should they take them down? It's very expensive to take them down. And you can't do anything with them because the blades, you can't bury them because of the environmental protection. We'll look at that. Doesn't make sense, but that's what they say. So we are at the beginning of a great, beautiful golden age of business. And I think we're also at a golden age of common sense, because everything I'm saying to you, from a simple water faucet that doesn't allow water to come out appropriately to all of the other elements of what we do and what we're going to do, to take $50 to $60 trillion off our country's balance sheet because some man that has no idea what he's doing has no idea. You know it. I know it. The Democrats know it. What they did is a crime by allowing that to happen. And I'll bet you, if you asked him today, how much acreage did you submit? Essentially, did you destroy? You destroyed the economic viability of drilling in the ocean. And with AI coming along and all, a lot of people don't realize that AI is going to be a big thing, but you'll need double the electricity at least that we have right now. So right now we produce electricity for many, many different things. AI is a very big deal in terms of the future. China is already building electric facilities, big, bold electric facilities. And you know how they're being fired up? With coal. They're being fired up with coal. And we're going to build bigger and better ones. People like Hussein that are doing the same thing as he is. I'll bet they don't do it as well because I know how he does it, but they're doing a lot of things. The problem is they can't get their permits because I say build the plant with the building. So with the structure, build the plant, because if you go into the grids are old. So they said, that's a great idea. In other words, build your electric facility alongside of your plant. And you could have extra output if you want, because once you build it, you can make it larger pretty inexpensively. You could have extra output, which you'll sell to the public, but build it with the plant. And people are loving that idea. So we're going to have
that is, that's how they're building Bitcoin mining facilities. Okay. They're putting them right next to a power plant so that they are joined. One investment. I think Marathon is the company doing this. That's what Trump's talking about. Okay. That $20 billion, I am convinced, is for Bitcoin infrastructure. And that's why he's taking this guy and publicizing him. First speech of the year, brings this guy out and says, hey, look, we made this deal. It's this big, but it might be twice this big. I don't know what else to say. People are like, this entire thing is too insane to be true. Okay. This is how they build Bitcoin plants. Okay. Or power plants and Bitcoin mining facilities right next to each other to utilize that power source. And then there's a surplus that goes out to society. And you're not doing, hey, man, ultimately, the energy production might go full nuclear. And if that would have been a smart Green New Deal, right? And we can capture solar better. All these things are possible. But hey, do you think that there's just any chance that the Green New Deal was itself a story front as part of this to wake people up about what it was they were doing while this unstoppable technology was implemented? Is it the bad guys doing it? It's for everyone to decide, but it is happening. Okay, so let me find where I want to go next in this Trump speech. I'm going to try to actually be somewhat aligned. He talked about the elections twice, and the comments there are very interesting. He said that he won by millions and millions of votes over Joe Biden. So he's talking about the challenges they face when they come into office. Talking about how he's facing all of these terrible challenges because Joe Biden has done the worst things imaginable.
Commitment further underscores that many of the greatest business leaders on earth are seeing a very bright economic future for America since the election. As you know, a lot of positive things have happened. We are inheriting a difficult situation from the outgoing administration, and they're trying everything they can to make it more difficult. Inflation is continuing to rage, and interest rates are far too high. And I've been disappointed to see the Biden administration's attempt to block the reforms of the American people and that they voted for. We had a landslide election. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of people. Nobody even knows how many people, millions. And they're still counting in some areas. You know, they're still counting the vote in some areas. Can you believe this? What a place. What a horrible place. One of the things we're going to do is we've got to fix the election so that we get honest counts and they get done by 10 o'clock in the evening or something thereabouts. They have places where they're still counting votes. President Biden's actions yesterday on.
Okay, and then of course he goes on to say that he would absolutely overturn Biden's executive action to close down the offshore drilling, 625 million miles, fully covering the coastlines of the entire country. And I think it might be worth looking into that executive order because depending on how that thing's written, it could be operating as a potential step to defend the borders of the United States, the ocean borders, through this period between right now and when the inauguration happens. And, you know, this isn't a Q show, but this is pretty crazy here. I received this earlier. Oh, one second. I thought I had downloaded it. Wasn't planning to talk about this today, but might as well. Spectrum Internet. We're preparing for potential service outages during the storm. If you lose power, call your utility company. And of course, they give you the website for storm prep to lose your. Let's actually just go there. Why not just take a look at that? But supposedly there's a big storm that's going to happen in all sorts of places on Friday, on the 9th. Okay. The internet's going to go out. And there are some who would think that potentially the 10 days between the internet going out and Trump's victory party sounds like 10 days of darkness to me. But, hey, man, I'm not that guy. Stormy Joe will have a take on it, I'm sure. But, man, I got that and I was like, gosh, this is so annoying. They're making us think that when our internet goes out, it's definitely, absolutely, positively going to be this storm that's happening outside. Okay? Have you ever heard of the cable internet company hitting you up to let you know that your internet might go out because there's a storm? I don't have a history of any of that. I mean, certainly nothing in my actual history of messages from them. But the cable internet company is going to let you know that the storm might knock out your internet 2 days in advance? I don't know what you say about that. Honestly, I don't know. Okay. There was some other storm thing last week that people were discussing, and maybe they were onto something. Maybe they weren't. I don't remember it. But man, how about that timing? Just so strange. So wait, were we talking about data centers? I went totally off track there. Anyhow, if it comes back to me, fine. Otherwise, let's move on. Oh, the elections. The elections. Millions and millions and millions of voters. No one knows how many. They're still counting votes. How's that happening? How's that happening? Is he lying? He's certainly triggering the media. He's potentially demanding a response to that portrayal. Will they write about him that Trump was spreading disinformation about our elections? And if they did that, would anyone believe it? Because everyone knows now that they count votes for weeks on end. Millions and millions and millions. No one knows how many. Well, is he saying that, like literally 0 people know how many? Possibly. It's entirely possible that nobody knows how many votes are ever there in our elections. Okay? Our elections are fake. Nobody ever checks, by the way, to see if all the votes are there. So if you want to say, well, you can't say that. Sure you can. There's no proof otherwise. None. Anywhere. And they create votes to substantiate the computer numbers. So how much do they do that is the question. Okay? They can show us pictures of people all over the country voting in mass. Do we know those are true? Are they just particular vote centers that are the only vote center in a given area with a big population? So, of course, there's a lot of people there. We don't know. We don't know any of that. It's trust me. It's always trust me. He's saying, if he's just saying it kind of figuratively, he could be saying, no one out there knows how many votes were cast, what the final tally was. Well, of course, it was also a fake election, right? So there's no actual final tally. But the point is nobody knows. And they're still counting, he says. Total refutation of the idea that this was a real election or a legitimate election. I mean, it's pointless. We've gone through this a number of times, so I'm not going to rehash it right now. But, like, if you want proof, that's proof. He said it throughout 2020, leading right up to January 6th. If you watch Hindsight 2020 last night, you can see the things that he was saying. He was saying, as president, in official statements, which is what Twitter is and was, that the process is fake and invalid and illegitimate. He was saying that as president in official statements. It doesn't matter that the people on TV said that Donald Trump was stupid and he doesn't know what he's saying and he's spreading disinformation and all of it's been debunked, baseless claims, no evidence. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. None of that matters. None of it matters in the least what they said or whether or not they got people to believe it or whether courts said it. Okay? None of it matters. We went through the full episode yesterday talking about how we are in a post-constitutional order and that things that happen are illegitimate, unlawful, unconstitutional, null and void from their beginning, and because of that, vitiate everything after. All right? That's where we are. The fact that courts decide they're not going to take Donald Trump's case and they're not going to declare that he won the election or anything like that does not matter at all. 0% does not matter. Okay? He talked about the elections again later on. Let me see if I can locate that clip. Yes, here we are. So I'm going to just start here. He's talking about the border wall, and this is good preface for the important thing about elections that I want to show you.
steel, concrete, rebar, exactly as they want. Very, very heavy steel, very powerful steel, hard to cut. Very, very heavy, 7,000-pound concrete, which is a very strong concrete. Everything was top of the line. Very expensive. Would be double what we paid for it then, 6 years ago. But let me just tell you, they were selling it for 5 cents on the dollar to people. And those people were calling us, asking us to pay them 200 cents because it's a good deal because we can have it immediately. And you know what immediately is? Just leave it in place. No. The papers haven't written that, though. You know, that deal is like all the other things that these people do. These people either hate our country or they're very stupid. And I don't believe they're stupid because nobody can cheat on elections like they cheat and be stupid. They either hate our country or they're stupid. So remember what I said because nobody wants to report it. They were selling the wall for 5 cents on the dollar and trying to resell it back to us for 200 cents or less, but for 200 cents on the dollar. That's a nice return.
And by the way, that's basically just money laundering. You give something away for virtually nothing. They sell it back to you for twice as much as it's worth. That's money laundering. And it's creating a record of legitimacy. That's what he's saying, I think. I think that's what he's hinting at.
Not putting fact checks on posts on its website. And Meta said today it would stop putting fact checks on its website and instead allow community.
Well, I watched their news conference, and I thought it was a very good news conference. I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook. I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that. Say it?
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past? With
Probably. Yeah, probably.
The last time you were here, you were asked a question about the U.S. possibly launching a preemptive strike on Iran. You said you wouldn't answer.
Oh, man.
But who?
Obviously.
Okay, we can talk about that, but we heard that last time. We discussed it on the show, a preemptive strike against Iran. And he basically said he would never tell anybody what he was going to do in a military sense. So I thought there was something else that he was saying about, I could swear there was something else with the elections. But anyhow, he mentioned twice that they cheat on elections like nobody's business. Did he say that the 2024 election was a legitimate election? Did he say that they had the vote tally and they knew it to be correct? No. He said the exact opposite. He said they won by millions and millions and millions. Nobody knows how many. And that they're still counting votes. I just listen to the man and take him seriously. That's all. That's all I do. Because he's the president. And it's funny because the journalists were like, Mr. President. What do you want me to say? I mean, we've been saying it for 4 years. For the entire time. I've never called Joe Biden president. And I think we were under some kind of military government. Trump may be a real American president, or he may be a face of that military government. Whatever it is, that's the guy. Okay? He has always been in charge because the thing he represents has always been in charge. There's been no time where that thing has not been in charge. And it doesn't matter if we felt like it definitely wasn't. Okay? There's no time when it has not been in charge. Now, the concern is that thing the same thing that has been in charge before? I don't think it is, because if it was, they could have just kept us going in that material world and all of that stuff. But instead, there's been this cultural awakening to truth, to ultimate truth. That's what this is. Let us continue. Here we are.
bold electric facilities. And you know how they're being fired up? With coal.
Ah.
They're being fired up with coal.
Wrong clip. Can't believe I had that one saved. I'm so terrible at this. I really am. What I ultimately need is a producer. Let's do it in this order.
In the history of our country, relatively, it would be the equivalent of substantially over $1 trillion today. We lost 38,000 people.
He's talking about the Panama Canal, by the way.
People, they died from malaria, mosquitoes. They were unable to stop the mosquitoes. They paid people 5 times more to take the job. Many of those people died. We gave it away for $1. But
actually, you know what? I think that an extended Panama clip is worth it. He went on, he talked about the Panama thing for a few minutes and wove some stuff in, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Here we are.
Being respected again all over the world. The Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. You know, it's the most expensive structure ever built in the history of our country, relatively. It would be the equivalent of substantially over $1 trillion today. We lost 38,000 people. Think of it, 38,000 people, they died from malaria, mosquitoes. They were unable to stop the mosquitoes. They paid people 5 times more to take the job. Many of those people died. We gave it away for $1.
Was Bill Gates dropping malaria mosquitoes on them in Panama back in, what did he say? Whenever that thing was built, I think it was like 1907 or something. It's a conspiracy theory.
But the deal was that, you know, they have to treat us fairly. They don't treat us fairly. They charge more for our ships than they charge for ships of other countries. They charge more for our Navy than they charge for navies of other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated every aspect of the agreement, and they've morally violated it also. And they want our help because it's leaking and not in good repair. And they want us to give $3 billion to help fix it. I said, well, why don't you get the money from China? Because China's basically taken it over. China's at both ends of the Panama Canal. China's running the Panama Canal. And they come to see this Biden, this guy who should never have been allowed even to run for president. Of course, she shouldn't have either, because that never happened. I had to be 2 people, not 1. But they want $3 billion to fix the Panama Canal that's run by China and makes a lot of money, China. One of the most profitable structures ever built, because you have ships lined up back to Florida, frankly, and they just keep going through. And the numbers are staggering, $500,000 to $1 million a ship. And they took it away from us, meaning we gave it to them for $1. But not going to happen. What they've done to us, they've charged us, they've overcharged our ships, overcharged our Navy. And then when they need repair money, they come to the United States to put it up. We get nothing. Those days are over. Working with the Republican majorities in Congress will.
Okay. Now, all of that is very interesting. The China aspect, they're guarding both ends of it, he said. Yesterday, he said that China and Russia were covering the waters around Canada and guarding those trade routes. So Russia and China are guarding trade routes around Canada until we take over guarding those trade routes around Canada. And China is guarding the Panama Canal until we take over guarding the Panama Canal. What are we supposed to pretend that means? Is he going to go to war with China? He's telling us that China has control of the Panama Canal and they guard both ends of it. And then later on, he says, let me see if I can find this quickly. Oh, here we are. So he gets asked by a reporter, because this is a press conference as well. And so pairing these, I think, is important, because he immediately responds, the Panama Canal was built for our military to use. Basically, let's see how he says it exactly. I don't remember his exact wording.
If we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth, can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is?
No, he cannot guarantee that he's not going to use economic or military coercion. Okay? Plain and simple.
Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold the vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person. But that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive. They say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. And I believe that's why Jimmy Carter lost the election, even more so than the hostages. Those two things.
Hold on. We'll come back to that in just a second. But what he says is really interesting here. Okay. First of all, he said the Panama Canal was built for our military use so that they could get around from coast to coast. Okay. And then, of course, the northern passage would be around Canada. So it's hugely important for the United States as a regional superpower to have unrestricted access to those waterways. Very simple. Okay. So when he says China may well be guarding it now. I don't believe they're guarding it on behalf of the regime. Otherwise, us taking the Panama Canal away from China would require war. We're not going to war with China. The war is against the regime. Okay? It's against the bankers, it's against the regime. Now, we know elections are fake. We have to assume they were fake then. What cost Jimmy Carter that election? The Iran hostage crisis. That's the story we're told. But of course, the Iran hostage crisis was bullshit and a total inversion in how it's communicated to us. That is nonsense. Trump is saying that Jimmy Carter lost that election, that fake election, of course, to, by the way, Ronald Reagan, who's everybody's hero, and George H.W. Bush, who's one of the major villains of the tale. Together. Oh, it's cute. As long as it works together, they put the really charming guy up there, the actor, and he brought in the head of the CIA with him. Okay? It is what it is. You might love Reagan. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about Reagan. I don't care if you love Reagan. I don't care. I'm just trying to apply the same epistemology to everything and see what fits into a logical framework. So the Panama Canal went to the regime. Didn't go to China. China might have gotten the opportunity to operate it because, of course, George H.W. Bush was driving the New World Order, the initiation of the New World Order. And he had no bones about saying it. And he opened up the world to China. And so these things are all a part of that. These are allowing the global regime to take over greater parts of the world. And so it's for the military to use. It's going to be returned to the United States and the control of the United States. That's an enormous deal. And he's saying it right out, okay? Just saying what he's saying. To me, that's amazing. I will come to this in a second. Okay, just making sure that I'm on all of these things. Oh, yes, we have a few more to go. All right. This was such an interesting press conference. So he's talking about Afghanistan, and this is just brief. This is just something that caught my ear. Maybe this is not your pattern, and that's all good. But I think he's saying something here.
Many badly, horrifically injured. Nobody ever talks about them. No arms, no legs. Nobody ever talks about them. The way they got out was outrageous, leaving billions of dollars of brand new military equipment that I bought in the hands of the Afghans and specifically the Taliban.
So he's talking about how the government is funding the Taliban, and then he said that the Biden administration left all this weaponry there that he bought, and now it's in their hands. And the Taliban stopped the global opium trade, or at least the U.S. military guarded opium trade, probably to Big Pharma. So he bought those weapons. That I bought, he said. Okay? Not that the U.S. bought, that I bought. Just saying. So he bought the weapons. He is taking primary responsibility for it, above and beyond the military decided, the country decided. He's saying, I bought these weapons, and they've been handed over to the people who are now guarding that country and have removed the opium trade, because the opium trade in Afghanistan is over. What does that mean? Okay. So nobody ever, I mean, people who care about government spending and government corruption and stuff, but nobody besides them ever gives two shits when we send weapons to Israel or when we send weapons to, I don't know, some allied nation, France or UK or whatever it is. When we do arms deals to countries that we're told are friendly to the United States of America, nobody bats an eye. He's talking about an arms deal, and he's making it out that it's just Biden's fault the arms got left there. But I got to say, that sounds like an arms deal to the Taliban, because the Taliban are fighting the same global regime. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe the TV is just lying all the time. And we do know that the TV is lying all the time. So perhaps, maybe they lied to us about the Taliban. Maybe they lied to us about the friendliness to the United States of those countries it used to send weapons to all the time.
It's the group.
I know let's take that off. That was what I wanted from that. I'll leave it to you. Okay. This is how I see things. And we've been tracking this stuff for a pretty long time. I mean, I've been developing this and putting some evidence behind it for years now. Okay, so let's go here.
The towns have been obliterated. This was a Biden fiasco that that should have never happened.
He's talking about
if we had a real president, if we had a president that knew what he was doing, Russia would have never, ever.
If we had a real president,
gone in. But they did go in, and we have a mess. The cities are all blown up. The people have largely left. And the soldiers are killing each other at levels that haven't been seen since the Second World War. So we'll have to get that one straightened out, too. That's a tough one. Much tougher than it would have been before it started, I can tell you that. The deal could have been made just by an average deal maker. Deal could have been made on that. So thank you all for coming. We'll take a couple of questions. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
President, thank you. Wanted to touch on the world on fire that you mentioned, but let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
Okay, so then he's back into that. But yes, a world on fire. Let us go next on our lovely boat to the Gulf of Mexico. No longer, by the way, the Gulf of Mexico. Its name has been changed.
Changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
The Gulf of America. It sounds like the world is changing, and he's describing how the world is going to be. And the reason it's going to be that way is because America will be kind of the regional sovereign and superpower whose task it is to protect America and these other nations that will remain sovereign from the infiltration that has been going on for millennia. You don't have to agree with me, but everybody else is like, Donald Trump's he's trying to take over the world. Is that what he's trying to do? Is that what he's trying to do? He's obviously militarily protecting the country. Panama Canal, ours. Above Canada, ours. That's it. Those waterways are ours. China and Russia have other places to dominate. And in the Southern Hemisphere, you're going to have the nations of the Middle East, probably led by Saudi. And you're going to have maybe South Africa. What's that, a BRICS nation? India is obviously a superpower. And then Brazil in South America. It is a totally consistent worldview being presented, and you can watch it evolve over time. And all of these people, man, I'm not trying to call somebody out. Maybe the person's a nice person. I don't know. Somebody in the chat on the stream of their press conference was upset that Donald Trump was doing a deal with a Middle Eastern man because right now Islam is raping girls in UK. I mean, I know the info up's there, and I am not disputing that the problem is a real problem. If it's done by Muslims, I don't know. Are they devout Muslims if they're doing that? I'm not sure that the Muslim problem is the problem. It could just be the regime problem. And you might believe it's the regime problem because the problem's 10 years old. Okay? It's been out there for a long, long time. And people are pretending to have just found out about it right now. And that's because the media has protected them. The regime has protected them. You want to go to war with Islam? Didn't we try that under George W. Bush? That's the most nonsense neocon view of the world imaginable. We need to advance past that. Okay? There is not fully understandable, of course. There is at least a coherent view of the world that is not that complicated to see and engages the reality of what the actual war is and what the physical dimensions of that are. Okay. And that's what I'm trying to lay out. So it looks like a region of responsibility, as we've talked about for years. It looks like there is some form of sovereign alliance. I don't think Donald Trump is ultimately going to take over Greenland and Canada and Panama. But maybe they are signing up for this regional protection in some sort of pact with the nations where the world is divided up in similar sorts of subspaces so that we don't have a one world international global order and so that power is more balanced. I can't convince you that that's what's happening, but it sure looks like it. Here is Trump's envoy to the Middle East. I believe his first name, I'm pretty sure his first name is Steve Witkoff. And he comes up and gives a few words about the situation in the Middle East. Trump says that he didn't even know he was there and brings him up.
Do you have concerns about HTS taking control of
By the way, I
Syria?
have the envoy here. Is that in the back? It is. Standing with my son, Eric, is Steve Witkoff, who's just got back from the Middle East, and he's done a fantastic job. He's a great deal maker. I said, what we need there is a deal maker because nobody makes a deal. We have people that understand where the rivers are and where the meets and bounds are, but they can't talk. They can't make deals. Steve's done a great job. I just want to thank you, Steve. You've been working endlessly for months, and he's working specifically on the hostages, trying to get them back.
Well, that was my second question is Hamas.
Steve, come up for a second. Maybe you might want to say a couple of words.
Sir,
I didn't
another hostage
know Steve was going to be here, actually.
Neither did I.
He's done a fantastic job, and it's a dangerous job, too, and we appreciate it. He didn't know about this kind of danger and the other deal-making he does. Now he sees a lot of big danger. Come on up, Steve.
Mr. President, can I ask you the second part of that? Hamas released
just one
another
second,
hostage
please.
video.
I'm going to give you a little report on the hostages, if I can. Steve? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wow. Well, I think we're making a lot of progress, and I don't want to say too much because I think they're doing a really good job back in Doha. I'm leaving tomorrow back to go to Doha, but I think that we've had some really great progress, and I'm really hopeful that by the inaugural, we'll have some good things to announce on behalf of the president. I actually believe that we're working in tandem in a really good way, but it's the president, his reputation, the things that he has said that are driving this negotiation, and so hopefully it'll all work out and we'll save some lives. I believe we've been on the verge of it. I don't want to discuss sort of what's delayed it. There's no point to be negative in any way, but I think it's the president, his stature, what he said he expects, the red lines he's put out there. That's driving this negotiation. I'm going back probably either this evening or tomorrow night.
Are you confident there'll be a deal before January 20th, or is that something that's likely to happen? If there's a deal even at all, and we've been hearing this now for the better part of.
I know. I would say better be right. I would say that the president is exasperated. I don't want to talk for him, but look, I don't know anyone who delegates better than President Trump. He gives us a lot of authority to speak on his behalf, and he exhorts us to speak emphatically. And emphatically means you better do this, because the alternative.
Do you think they're waiting for President Trump to take office?
No, I think they heard him loud and clear. Better get done by the inaugural.
But when you say all hell will be paid, all hell must be paid if they don't release the hostages.
Well, do I have to define it for you? All hell will break out. If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas. And it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. There should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that. But there was. And many people are killed. They're no longer hostages. I have
people from Israel and others calling, begging me to get, we had also people there from the United States, just so you know. They're holding some so-called hostages from the U.S. But I've had mothers come to me and fathers crying, can I get the body of their son back? Can I get the body of their daughter back? That beautiful girl where they threw her in the car, pulled her by her ponytail and threw her in the car like she was a sack of potatoes. I said, what happened to her? Sir, she's dead. Like a 19, 20-year-old beautiful girl. And the way they treated her. And I just say it this very simply. Steve's got a job to do. He's a great guy, great negotiator, great person. They respect him over there already. It's what we needed over there. We have people that know everything about the Middle East, but they can't speak properly. They don't know. He's a great negotiator. That's what I needed. I could have sent that gentleman right over there, Hussein. He's a great negotiator. There are people. They're rare. Great negotiators are very rare, like a great surgeon. But we have the right person. But I tell this, I don't want to hurt the negotiation. If the deal isn't done before I take office, which is now going to be 2 weeks, all hell will break out in the Middle East. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
He talks about speaking emphatically. That was speaking pretty emphatically right there. Okay. He is asking these people to go negotiate on his behalf. And the negotiation is, this is what Donald Trump says it's going to be. And he tells them to speak that emphatically, and it works. What does that tell you about Donald Trump? He said a couple of weeks ago, when they did the reopening of Notre Dame, that he was being publicly shown to the world as king of the world or king of the West. And he is being treated that way in these negotiations. Now, by the way, the hostage thing, Donald Trump said they're all dead 1 million times. Okay. He can say whatever he wants about 10-7. He has to say that in front of the media. The paragliding go-karts incident, we're trying to get hostages back from the paragliding go-kart incident. That's not what's happening. Okay. But there is strong signal there about Donald Trump's relative power to other world leaders, or power relative to other world leaders. It is all coming into extreme clarity at the moment you would expect it to come into extreme clarity. Does that happen by accident, or are these things in some way scripted? I would argue to you that these things are playing along on a path, or perhaps there are other different spiritual ways to talk about that. It could be God's plan rather than a political script. It could be God's plan that this political script was constructed in order to wake up the people while also making these changes at the reality prime level. Entirely possible that that's what's happening. In fact, one way or another, it's God's plan. But I think we are also on the right track as far as what's happening in the macro picture worldwide and how we should respond to that by understanding what the threats in our world actually are. He is just knocking out the idea that all of these various countries are our enemies or can be painted as such. This is a major realignment of not only the political interests and the geopolitical interests, but the way people perceive their world. And that's what we talked about in the Todd Jacob segment earlier. Okay. So he's talking about the court cases. Okay, here we go. So let's forget that. I think he asks a question or gets asked a question and then switches subjects. And this will be the last clip we do from the press conference.
Cases, so we're very happy about that. Please.
Your position is clear. But have you directed your staff to take specific action to draw plans? And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't.
Should we listen to it again? I don't know if Denmark has any right to Greenland, and we need it to protect the free world. Is he just lying? He talks about it all the time. Is he lying? The only worldview that makes that comment make sense is the one that we have been elaborating for years. We need this to protect the free world. Protect the free world from whom? The regime. Not Russia, not China. He's clearly not at war with Russia and China. It could not be clearer that he is not at war with Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. He's not at war with any of these nations. They are on the same page, whether that is because there is some sovereign alliance or that Trump has leveraged the situation and manipulated things to his liking. They are on the same page. Even if Denmark does have a claim to it, they still need to give it to us. Is he going to invade Greenland? No. Just shipping lanes. Let's go back and we'll listen to it one more time. Oh, damn. There we are.
People have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Have you asked your staff to draw plans for acquisition? I mean, are you active?
No, we're not at that stage, but we have people. I haven't even entered office yet.
Secondly, sir, Elon Musk has drawn some criticism and a lot of attention for some of his actions and provocative statements about foreign affairs, including in Europe. Your reaction to that, is that appropriate for
you? Mean where he likes people that tended to be conservative? I don't know the people. I can say Elon's doing a good job, very smart guy. I don't know the people you're talking about. He was, I know he said some negative things about a couple of people that are running for office, but that's not so unusual. Yes, please.
Okay, so I figured that was kind of just a fun one to lay in there at the end. So he says, China and Russia boats again. We need to protect these countries from China and Russia. Does he really mean that? Does he really mean that? Is he about to go to war with China and Russia? There's absolutely no indication whatsoever that Donald Trump wants war with China and Russia. That said, he's also going to protect the United States and the border of the United States by taking back control of this region. And, if you have ever read George Orwell, 1984, he talks about Oceania and, I'm going to forget the names of the regions, but they're basically this. And the idea is that the people of the world are propagandized into hating one another and thinking that they're all one another's enemies while not recognizing the actual enemy. Seems like that's what's happening. Did Orwell have an insight into what the real world actually looked like? Yes, he did. What's happening in Orwell is happening now in reality. We have the memory hole. People talk about it all the time. I mean, you could read that book right now, and at every moment while you're reading or listen to the audiobook, whatever, think about what's happening right now and find match after match after match after match after match. And there's a reason for that, okay? That is a real aspect of the world. Eurasia is one of them. Someone in the chat dropped. And then what's the other one? Oceania, Eurasia. Gosh. Someone will drop it in. Okay, so he talked a bunch about Greenland. And I wanted to share this because I posted this on Truth Social earlier today. Dun, 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 dun. Where is it? Oh, I had it. Now I lost it. And I'm going to have to find it somewhere else. In fact, you know what? Let's just open up Truth Social and look at a couple of these because they're all right here, and it'll give me a great visual presentation. So here's me today. They're going to say that Trump invaded Canada, Greenland, Panama. What else? Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. It'll be like when Russia invaded Western Russia, what the TV calls Ukraine. He makes it friendly and funny now so that the narrative does not work when they attempt it. Okay? Governor of the great state of Canada, Trump on the mountain. All of it. Comments about Trudeau. All the stuff on the Panama Canal. All the stuff on Greenland. It's being approached and presented in a friendly and funny way. Okay? The case for it is being made broadly by the people. And at some point in the future, the way they would describe this in the future where we are the Nazis, as I wrote about over the weekend, the media would, and I think probably still will, present all of this as Donald Trump invading all of these nations that everybody knows are the nicest and most peaceful nations. Canada, Greenland, Panama. That's not what's happening. I imagine they will still remain sovereign nations. I think they should still remain sovereign nations. In whatever system comes next, perhaps it doesn't matter. I don't know. Okay, I'm, again, far back on an informational timeline compared to the people who are deciding these things. But we can still see something emerge in reality in a, in an informational past relative to them. But it is emerging. It is entirely possible that they would say Donald Trump invaded these nations in order to take them over. Hopefully they remain sovereign nations. I don't want them to become part of the United States of America. But if that's what it's going to be, so be it. I'm not in control of the situation. It sounds like a bad idea to me. I don't like when there are greater centralizations. But if this is how the protection of sovereign nations must occur in order for the regime not to control the entire thing and be able to operate their various global criminal enterprises, then that's what you do. So it seems like that's what's happening. Now, let me repost share some Greenland stuff, okay? So the big announcement, I think it was actually announced yesterday, that Donald Trump Jr. was going to travel to Greenland. And Charlie Kirk went along with him, which is weird. They went to Greenland this morning. Donald Trump Jr. traveled on Trump's plane to Greenland. Now, they went to Thule Air Force Base, or formerly Thule Air Force Base, and now it's got a crazy snow people name that I have no ability to understand. Hold on, let me see. I was posting about this in Telegram, and a good conversation developed in my chat. And by the way, if you're not on Telegram, I think you're probably crazy. And if you are on Telegram, I would suggest that you jump in my Telegram chat because people think and discuss interesting things. So the base was renamed, maybe this isn't that hard, Pituffik Space Base, okay? It was transferred to the Space Force, I guess, in 2020. Greenland's Air Force Base was transferred to the military branch that Donald Trump set up that then became an intelligence agency. What does that mean? I mean, honestly, what does that mean? Like, how can all these things be true in the world where the regime is just in charge everywhere and we are somehow not winning? And I mean winning on the top level, not winning in fake elections. This is the macro picture. This is what matters. Okay, the rest of it is an explanation to the people that they will believe, but the big power struggle actually happens a lot higher than that. So, by the way, there's a Thule Society, and I would encourage everybody to go to Prussiagate and search Thule on their Substack, and you will find Urania Part 3. The Urania series in general is the millennia-long history of the gender agenda that has been implemented here in the last 10 years. And of course, this was in Germany round about 1917. And it was absolutely disgusting. Donald Trump posts this today. Donald Trump Jr. hanging with these guys in front of a statue and hanging with some snow people with MAGA hats on who look very, very happy to see Donald Trump Jr. there. Greenland looks like an absolutely wonderful place. These seem like very kind and happy people. Going to be hard to claim we invaded Greenland, I said. And I think it will be hard to claim that we have somehow invaded Greenland. Okay, so cool. All right. I think we got to most of it. The point here is Donald Trump, as I said a few weeks ago, was being portrayed as king of the world or king of the West. He is now publicly taking control of everything and exerting his level of power publicly while they are pretending that Donald Trump still cannot serve in office. And let me find this Joy Reid clip from this morning, and maybe we'll close down with this. Donald Trump is like, actually, you know what? That's what I want to find. Let's do this. We'll do this at the end. I'm rewriting my show in process, as I often do. And I suppose or hope or think maybe you guys know that that's just how I operate at this point. But hey, man, if I think of something else good, I can't just not add it in, right? I'm trying to make the case here and be able to illustrate the ways in which I am attempting to understand as complex a situation as I have ever thought about by far. I mean, we exist in an absolutely crazy time, and it's extraordinarily interesting, but it is also undeniably insane. Where are you, Joy Reid? I will also say, by the way, that, hold on, I just found the Joy Reid clip. I will also add on something I wanted to mention in the discussion of the Trump press conference. They talked about Meta there. Dana White was announced to be on the board of directors at Meta. Strange, okay? Trump friend, cool. All that's all good. Strange as far as the show goes. Strange as far as the Ari Emanuel relationship goes. Ari Emanuel, his brother was Rahm Emanuel, Obama's chief of staff, the quote-unquote Biden regime ambassador to Japan. Very corrupt guy. Their other brother is a guy who thinks everybody should die at 75 for the good of humanity. And Ari is the most powerful lawyer in Hollywood, basically. Or I mean, agent, I should say. Entertainment management company and agency. He runs WME, William Morris Endeavor. And they own UFC and tons of other entertainment. And they're the agents of the people putting on the television show. So all of that is very strange. You cannot just ignore that kind of stuff. So Dana White's going there to Meta, and then they are going to do away with fact checkers and simply implement the community notes feature. And so I guess that this has been proven as some effective way to wean people off the central narrative lightly, mildly. I don't know. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Elon Musk keeps pushing the idea that Twitter is like the ultimate source of truth. That is insane. Okay? It's insane. I really want to talk about this other thing we're going to have to save that for tomorrow. We're going to pick up on this part, the Twitter source of truth. And by the way, tomorrow is the subscriber stream. So let's do that at 6 p.m. Eastern. All right. 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk about some of this stuff, the AI, the information space, and whatever. And then obviously Q&A. If you want to join the subscriber stream, you have to be a paid subscriber. And I will put up a post with the links, and in the comments to that post, as a paid subscriber, you can ask whatever questions you want, and I will try to get to all of those and discuss them at whatever length I think is justified. But we will save that part for tomorrow. The stuff in the censorship space is going to be very, very interesting. So I said Joy Reid, but I said I also wanted to play something else. And then I got off on my tangent and forgot what else it is I said I wanted to play. So I'm going to play Joy Reid, and I'm going to think about it while I do it.
At a party at Mar-a-Lago last night. And that's not the news. The news is that the party was celebrating his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The guest list included several key players in those efforts, like Rudy Giuliani and Michael Flynn. Italy's conservative Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was also there. They all gathered to celebrate John Eastman, who advised Trump in 2020 that Vice President Mike Pence had the power to unilaterally discard official electoral votes during the congressional certification process. In a video posted online, apparently taken from the audience, Trump sang Eastman's praises, insisting Eastman was, quote, right the whole time. Tomorrow will mark 4 years since Trump's conspiracy led thousands of pro-Trump extremists to storm the United States Capitol. Fortunately for Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris doesn't share his values set. Tomorrow, she will preside over the certification of Donald Trump's victory. Harris will...
All right, let's go ahead and pause that and stop that, because that was a very interesting clip, but not at all what I wanted to talk about. And clearly 2 days old. Man, there was a funny Joy Reid clip this morning where she was wigging out and basically saying that Trump could not be allowed to take power because he was an insurrectionist. And so it is appropriate to make sure an insurrectionist does not take power. And she was comparing the fake vote tabulation from 2021 to the fake vote tabulation that the Congress presented yesterday. And that is going to really be something if they genuinely attempt that. And I'm not sure they have it in them, to be honest. That would be absolutely mind-blowing. But okay. I have failed. My spontaneous thought has failed. Let's do this clip from CNN, and then we will wrap things up.
Moments ago, just arrived in Greenland. Take a look at this. He posted this video from inside the cockpit as the plane approached the island. President-elect Trump has been floating the idea of the U.S. acquiring Greenland, which is a Danish territory. Greenland says their island is not for sale. CNN's Fred Pleitgen joins us now. Fred, what are officials in Denmark and Greenland saying about this visit?
Well, first of all, they've been saying for the last couple of years, ever since the first Trump administration, that Greenland is not for sale, and they continue to say that as well. It's quite interesting to see that video of what they call Trump Force One descending there into New Greenland, which what appeared to be a Trump action figure in the cockpit, on the cockpit dashboard there. We do have some sound actually now from Don Jr. after he landed in Greenland. He, of course, claims that all of this is just a private visit, despite some of the talk from his father. Let's listen in.
We're a little pressed for time because we only have a couple hours of daylight, so we got to see everything, but we're really excited to be here. Thank you guys so much. just here as tourists, seeing it looks like an incredible place. We've been talking about going for a while. I was actually supposed to be here last spring for some of the stuff I do in my free time, but just really excited to be here. Awesome country. The scenery coming in was just spectacular. So just very excited to be here. Thank you. He says hello. Okay. We were talking to him yesterday, so he says hello to everyone in Greenland.
Now, he was asked afterwards, after that took place, whether his father still wants to buy Greenland. He refused to answer that question. He simply sort of went on and left the terminal building there. But, of course, we have heard on social media posts from the president-elect that he believes that having Greenland become part of the United States is, as he puts it, a necessity for the U.S. He also says he believes, or he has heard, that Greenlanders are MAGA, as he put it. And again, Jim, this is something that really stems from the first Trump administration, when at that point in time he believed that acquiring Greenland was nothing more than a large real estate deal. Of course, both Greenland and Denmark see that very differently. Both of them have said that the island simply is not for sale, despite the fact that, of course, it is in a very strategic location. We do have to point out the U.S. does have substantial military assets on Greenland, like the Thule Air Base, but also a missile defense as well. Another thing that's very concerning for the U.S. is that the Chinese have also tried to get in on Greenland.
That's really something, isn't it? I mean, he still calls it the Thule Air Base, too. That makes me want to ask the machine. I wonder if he is just giving the... That is amazing, okay? Pituffik Space Base is the name of that place. And this member of the regime media is still calling it the Thule Air Force Base, or Thule, or whatever it was he just said. Is he attached to that name? Is the regime attached to that name? Does he not know? Because if he doesn't know, then he can't be on expert TV presenting himself as an expert. But think about what is being shown here. They're doing this stuff nonchalantly. Okay? They're not making it a big deal. They're just doing it nice and easy. Donald Trump's new military branch now controls this Air Force base in Greenland. Denmark has no right to the territory. Donald Trump just said it from the Winter White House. And he's talked about Mar-a-Lago as well. In fact, now I have to look. Let me play this while I look. Because the stuff about Mar-a-Lago is pretty awesome. And that would be a great way to wrap things up. So let's do this clip. This is what Donald Trump is saying to the regime at this point. And this will be the title of today's show.
We got a problem. We pushed the ship too hard. We're off the grid. That means the computer's now offline.
Captain.
The ship's broken.
Captain, no one gets hurt if you don't play no game.
The ship's broken. We had to go.
Nobody gets hurt. Easy. Hey! Look at me.
Sure.
Look at me.
Sure.
I'm the captain now. You like a push?
Trump is showing the world that he has taken over in that narrative sense that we were talking about earlier. That is the tipping point. That's the threshold. That's the singularity. That's the two bands of cowboys and gangsters coming down to rob the train at the same time. Who's robbing the train? Donald Trump is robbing the train. He's the captain now. The regime has been overthrown, and it is being controlled by the leaders of, what we sometimes call the Sovereign Alliance. Regions of responsibility, these various world superpowers. Donald Trump is the captain now. He is showing the world that Donald Trump is the captain now. And let's take one last look at the press conference from today, because cannot leave this out.
But they'll be coming down. The senators also will be coming down, and then ultimately we'll be meeting in the White House in a few weeks. But right now, this is the winter season. You know, they sort of call this the winter White House. It was built, I don't know if you know this, Marjorie Meriwether Post and E.F. Hutton built this. It was the greatest of all the estates in our country. And I saved it, and I got a lot of credit for saving it. Most of these big, great houses have been knocked down in Palm Beach, just about all of them, actually. And they, you built 10 mansions on one site, but we saved it. But this was built as the Southern White House, and she gave it to the government. And by the way, Jimmy Carter gave it back. He said it's too expensive for the United States. So I didn't realize that.
Real quick, I was just told.
Actually, Jimmy Carter, Nixon was through Watergate. He came down. Nixon came here once, and he thought it was incredible. But he had a thing called Watergate, if anybody remembers that. And so he had other things on his mind, to put it mildly. And Jimmy Carter felt that it was too extravagant for the country. So fortunately for me, he gave it back to the foundation, and I bought it from the foundation.
On reconciliation, some Republicans saying in trade for a massive bill that you and they shared the interest in, they want to see big spending cuts. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm okay with.
Okay. Jimmy Carter and the Winter White House. Jimmy Carter gave the Winter White House away the same way he gave away the Panama Canal. And he gave it back to the foundation that held it until Trump took it. And now Trump has the greatest estate in the United States. The King's Palace of the United States is Donald Trump's, the Winter White House. Is it possible that that whole White House in D.C. is just that's the charade? Okay. We think about it the other way around. We default to that. Maybe that's the charade. The White House is effectively wherever the president is. The president has operated out of Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster with full security, no fly zones, all of it, for the last 4 years. What are we supposed to say? Donald Trump is telling the world that he is the captain now. The thing that people will ultimately realize about that is that our view of this story makes eminently more sense than what's on the fake news. Okay? We have properly tracked this reality while not knowing massive, massive chunks. But we have advanced years beyond where our peers are who believe that what the television says is true, which means that we are in a position to have ourselves prepared for the future. And a lot of people have had to struggle financially over the last few years, and I've been through some of that myself. Okay. And, I'm still in debt. Like, I make a living doing this, but I'm not remotely rich. And I got absolutely crushed in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 because I wasn't monetizing the show. The other people are not prepared for what reality actually is, and they're going to get hit with it a lot harder than we are because we're understanding that the world is a mess and that is ultimately unavoidable. And many of us have already confronted that fact, so we know, but others haven't. And so it's coming. It's coming. Don't know what else to say. All right. Let me take a look at the Rumble chat. Thank you all for hanging out and watching today. There were, I think, a couple subscription purchases. Poso for Hope, awesome, monthly supporter. And then I believe that Snowcat Operator was dropping subscriptions on people all over the place. And I thought I saw someone else was it as well. And now the chat's not going back far enough for me to. How strange. How very, very strange. I'm sorry that I may end up forgetting who else did that. And it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to search for it. So, okay. All right. So tomorrow night, tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Eastern. Paid subscriber stream. And with that, I will be back tomorrow, of course, on the podcast, maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. But as far as the paid subscriber stream goes, I will be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden will never be and was never president.
Well, what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon down on the range.